is January 2nd, 2024. We're going to talk today about witches. They're all over the place, uh, and some of them are received as Christians. Oh, in my day, well, even 40 years ago, anybody that had any kind of power was considered a Jezebel. Anybody that had more knowledge than what they thought the pastor did was considered a Jezebel. What people at that time didn't know, and I still don't believe a lot of them know, is witchcraft. There are three things to it. There is control, manipulation, and intimidation. So if somebody controls you, they control your thinking, whatever. You can be working with a spirit of witchcraft and think it's of God. You could become a witch, not knowing and understanding what you're doing, and be sincerely loving God with all your heart, but sincerely mistaken, sincerely misunderstanding what God is all about. So these are things that are pitfalls that you can check out. I don't believe that if you are a person who is truly searching for God, that God is in the place where He's going to punish you, that He's going to come down on you, because I'm telling you, God does not treat people with hellfire and brimstone the way we've been taught. That is usually, in a lot of ways, a form of control. Keep them in line, intimidate them, make them fear. The fear of God and the fear of what someone says and what someone does is all different things. The fear of God comes from God Himself. It doesn't come from what somebody told you or what somebody said, or it doesn't come from any of those things. It comes from inside, where God will talk to you and you will literally feel a reverence for Him. A reverence that says, not that way, this way. No, no, that's not me. This is me. Go this way. This is the Word. That's how God talks to His children. He doesn't come and put great fear on you and, this is so terrible. What you've done is so awful, and you are going to pay. That's not conviction. Conviction is, like I said, he'll touch you and he'll literally tell you, child, that's not my way. I will show you a better way. I will show you what I want because I love you. And so we can go in the right direction. But the other way around, and I want you to listen to me. I've said it before, but maybe perhaps people didn't understand. But Paul the Apostle said, don't we have the power to lead people around? He says, but I don't do that lest it be done to me. Well, that tells me that if you use the power that God has given you to control this one or this one or this one, you open a door for everybody to control you. At least the people that you try to control. Control is taking authority that it doesn't belong to you. It's taking power that doesn't belong to you. God didn't give you power and authority over your so-called brothers and sisters to tell them where to go, what to do. He didn't give you the power to go into your prayer closet and say, make them behave. Oh, I've seen people where they just said, punch them in the mouth and make them. Oh, my goodness. I'd be afraid to be in those shoes because that's so wrong. That's not how God teaches and His children. When you start saying make them, force them, tell them, deal with them, stop them, shake them, whatever kind of power that is a controlling power. And when you work that and that comes out of your mouth, it goes out into the atmosphere and it touches people. And when it touches them, okay, they no longer can find God. they turn this way, they see what you've said about them, what you think about them, what you feel about them, what you understand about them, what you said about them, what you're praying about them, everything, everywhere they go, they cannot, it's a stumbling stone. They can't find him. Now they can't even hear his voice because you're making a lot of noise. You're making a lot of action and a lot of activity in the spirit to force things to manipulate into what you want. That's religious works of witchcraft. And so you reach forth your hand and you grab a hold of somebody's life and bring them into subjection. Make them do this. This is the way they have to go. They have to follow this doctrine. They have to do that. No, no, they don't. They're free moral agents, and they have to follow God the way He leads them, the way He guides them. And He's got a gentle hand on people who do not know what you know. And I've said it before, I've said it many, many times, that in Christianity you can get hurt for what you don't know. But you could also hurt yourself by trying to control the lives of others, which the lives of others are none of your business. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. Well, preaching the gospel does not mean that you take control of lives and cause them and make them do what you want them to do. Oh no. Preaching the gospel is where you tell the truth, how Jesus died for them, how much He loved them. You tell the absolute positive truth to them. And that truth will set them free. Not you, not what you've said, not what you've done, not how you try and force them to come into church and force them into submission to what you want. You see, those people that force their wives into submission or force their husbands into submission, they're using a force that is not of God. There's no free moral agency of choice when you force someone. And God has given every man on this earth, every woman, a free moral agency of choice. That's why He doesn't want you using what you think you have, the calling you think you have, to force people to follow you. Jesus Christ didn't put His hand upon the disciples and force them, make them follow Him. He didn't do that. He said, come unto me. I will make you fishers of men. He will teach you how to be a fisher of men. He will reveal to you how. I will do that. He did not say, you better come with me, because if you don't, you're going to hell. This is the only way, and if you don't come, it is because you're this and you're that, and you're doing this and you're doing that. And so, Father, in the name of Jesus, I take authority over all of these people, and I command them to follow me. Ooh, I don't think that's what He said. I don't think that's what He said about His church, to His church, of His church, and to God. He said, all mine are thine, and all thine are mine. Because God said, no man can come unto me except the Father draw him. He didn't say except the Father grab him and force him and teach him and pound on him and hurt him till he gets to the very lowest level that he will look up. Oh, how foolish. That's not God at all. That has never been God at all. Because you see, when Jesus died on the cross, He did not force anybody to accept that truth. He gave everybody the power of choice. It's not by your words. It's not by what you think and say. It's not, oh, how long and hard you labored with souls and you just prayed night and day. God, make them do what they ought to do. Make them go where they ought to go. Make a way, Lord Jesus, to really spank them good and hard if they won't come. Ooh, scary. Because you see, every control that comes out of your mouth in prayer, now you have control upon you. Just like Paul the Apostle said, I don't do it lest it be done to me. Now you're in a place where you think you're following God, but you're following someone else who is controlling you. And that's what I call religious witchcraft, because they're as bad as you are. They are doing, he says, you will move everything to make another proselyte just like you, a child of hell. That's what he was talking about, a child of hell. He wasn't talking about a lot of things that you may think, but he was talking about how you go and dip into the flesh and do your own thing and claim God and think because you did that, all is of God. You think you can go and you can sing all day long and worship God practically all day long because you are a singer and you are a worship leader. But when it comes to living here and here, you lust after men or after women. You lust after this. You want more of this. You do this wrong. You hate this one. You get bitter with this one. You get angry when nobody will follow you. You have all of these sins that you haven't gotten under the blood. But you worship God all day long, so you're going to sing in heaven because this is what you've done, because you're a child of Abraham. And Abraham, whatever he did, it was accounted to him to his righteousness because he was obedient. Sure he was. But look at the obedience that he did. Look at that obedience. Abraham died so much to what he desired that he was willing to listen to God even if it took his own son. Now that's obedience. But you don't give up anything. You don't strive to. I don't have to do that. God didn't tell me I had to do that. God, no, the word don't teach that I have to do one thing. The word says I am saved. And it doesn't matter what I do, where I go, how I am saved. So you can throw that one out the window. So when you think someone is doing wrong, you get angry. You have self-righteousness. You have judgment. I'm allowed. I told him the truth, and they still won't come. That means to me that the Bible says I can dust my feet off of them, and they will never find God again. I can dust my feet off on them, because after all, they didn't listen to me. And you can't even see how wrong that is. That is control. And then, if you see somebody that has any kind of strength and power and wisdom in God, they are a Jezebel. Jezebel, you have to understand how evil and wicked that spirit is. You have to understand the controlling power that they have. You're looking in the mirror, dear. You are seeing the controlling power you have, that you use. So you see it everywhere. That one's a Jezebel. That one's a Jezebel. That one is. You're enforced by the forces that are not of God, and you use those forces. And you say, that one has a demon, that one has a demon. There's a demon. Oh, I studied that. I read in that book that this demon does this, and this demon does that, and that one does this. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Did you study Satan to find out about Satan? Did you talk to Satan to find out about Satan? Or did God come to you and lead, guide, and direct you and show you what was his and what wasn't his? Or did you read it from some book that somebody told you what it was? I'm not accusing you of anything, for there is only one that accuses you. He's the one that points the finger. He might use your brothers, your sister, your aunts, your uncles, your friends. He might use everybody and anybody, but that is a finger that he keeps on pointing at you. And God just doesn't operate that way. He doesn't accuse you of, well, you did this wrong, and you should have done that, and you better this, and you better that, and you shouldn't have. And if you are praying that way. Well, they should have done this and they should have done that, and it would be better for them that they went this way, and they should have understood that way, and they would have, they could have, whatever. Wow. The flesh can be exceedingly wicked. For like God said, the imagination of the heart above all things is exceedingly wicked. It's an imagination that exalts itself above God. It's the imagination within you that exalts yourself above God, and you will do the things that God never did. And you'll claim God the whole time you do them. He never took control of anybody's life. He never forced them into subjection. Jesus Christ gave them a choice and said, "Follow me." He gave them a choice to either go with him or not. Now, they talk about the part where God had a supper and he says, "Go out on the highways and byways and compel them to come in." Compel them to come in. That still is not forcing them. When you compel somebody to come in, it is the word of God that speaks to them, that compels them. It's the truth that speaks to them in love that compels them. That's what Jesus had. He had the power to walk and talk and speak in love, enough to draw that soul, and it would compel them. They couldn't fight it. The love of God was something they couldn't fight. The love of God was something that no man could resist. In the embodiment of Jesus Christ, they could not resist him. But you see, in your feeble mind of the flesh, that means force them. It does not. It does not force them at all. If you have enough of the Lord in you, you would compel them to come in, because they would hear a truth they never heard before. He even told them, "Discard everything you heard before me and come now with me." Dump what you think. If you have been playing around with souls and entertaining the enemy to cause and make people do what you want, and get them, most of all, get them inside your church at any cost. And if they don't come, God help them. Because they've lost all opportunity to ever find God, because they didn't listen to you. Never mind the way you think and feel is not of God. Never mind that you're not doing God's will. You've got God, and you are going to sit in his authority, and you are going to take over everybody. You could be a pastor. You could be a preacher. You could be a teacher. And you are past all feelings for anyone else. And you come into a territory and you claim it as your own. This is mine. Oh, well, that pastor down the street has been working for 40 years, and he has so many followers and so many people that he has to have 3 services on a Sunday. But I'm brand new, and this is mine. Now God gave this to me, and I'm taking over. So slowly you steal his church members, because you have a flashy, brand new, beautiful church. You have the ability to go here. You have the money for that. And he's practically poor compared to you. But many great people have come out of his ministry. But you just come and take over, because God told you this was your territory. So you mark it out. You control it. You take authority over it and control it, and you manipulate everything and all these people in the spirit, and you pray night and day with your prayer warriors to bring them in, bring them in, bring them in. That's control. Control is a terrible thing. This is why witches use it. It's a terrible, terrible thing. I mean, we're just touching on what a religious witch can do, how they can affect your mind. You could be looking for peace and you look up and you only see the witch that controls you and tells you you have to do it this way, this is way, and they can't see God anymore. Maybe for 40 years they saw God and suddenly you come into their life and you tell them that's not God, you don't have God. And that power touches their life and now they can't see and they know that they know there's something wrong. They can't find their way out. What's wrong? What's wrong? They don't know that you went in your prayer closet and you prayed against them to never see God without you, to never have God without you, that they can never see past what you think, feel, and say. They don't know you did that to them. They think that when they meet you that you're such a kind, loving, sweet person. And yet they don't know that you went into your prayer closet and controlled them, or at least think you could. Now, the wise one, the one that really has God, when they meet somebody like you, they know better. They know that no man can tell them where to go. No man can tell them how to worship God, what to do. Because you see, a call of God in whatever He decides for your life is strictly between you and Him. It's not between you and a man. It's not between you and a church. It's between God and you. And once you establish a relationship with God, then God leads you where to go. But He doesn't do it by taking you and forcing you. You see, your hands are your prayers. They're your prayers. They have power. You have power in prayer. They're your prayers. So when you take those hands and you grab and you pull down a person who really has God, you pull them to yourself, take dominion over them to yourself. You are now in trouble with God. Because you see, you're supposed to pull down strongholds of powers that are not of God. There is so much evil on the earth today. You could be pulling down strongholds of power everywhere you go, everything you touch, everything you see, because they are rulers of wickedness in high places. And they use principalities, even with the Bible, to control you, to manipulate you, to cause you to be what they want. And you haven't spent enough time with God, alone with God, to be sanctified, to find out how to hear only His voice. And you take the gospel and say, yeah, I've been called, and you run with it. And maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, you start to get, or maybe 2, you start to get tempted. You start to have thoughts that you shouldn't have. You start to have feelings towards whether it's men or women. You start to have them and you can't figure out why. And some of you, you don't even bother to find out why, because you didn't die to self. It comes on you real strong. The lust. It because you lusted to have a bigger church. You lusted to have more people. You lusted to influence. You lusted to have more money. You lusted to do this. You lusted to do that. And now in the back door comes sexual lust. And you start to look at naked bodies. You start to see pornography. And some of you even fall into pedophilia. Because you see, the appetite in this evil, it can't be satisfied. It grows and waxes worse and worse. But while you are in a place where you can still see a little bit, because I'm telling you, when you go against God in you, you go insane. Oh, I know, you don't believe me. That's your problem. But when you go against what God has given you, you are able to do anything because there's no more fear of God. That guard that He put up there, you went, I don't want it. You didn't say, I don't want it. You just went, I'm going to have what I want. Your thinking just goes along that because you didn't think God is anything to be afraid of. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. Oh, but he's not living. He's not here. We know that. Well, we know. Well, sure, I preach and I teach that God will do this, but you and I both know God's not going to come and do that. He gives you a sound mind. He expects you to make up your mind to do what is right by yourself, and it's going to be all okay. He did. Oh, that one over there that tells you these things are real. You know, hey, that person's in real trouble because they are working and telling you things to knock you off your horse so that you can't do what you're supposed to do. Well, they're telling you things to knock you off your horse so you can follow God the way Paul the apostle followed God. You see someone and you know they're not where they need to be. And you see a mirror of yourself. You see they are doing exactly what is in here with you and in here because you didn't die. You said, God called me. God's going to use me. Every person on this earth should separate themselves long enough to be sanctified. But you see, these higher ups in church tell you, if you separate yourself, you are sensual and devilish. God tells you to separate enough for you to be sanctified. But they tell you, oh no, if you separate from us, because they know if you separate, you won't listen to what some of the stuff they tell you that's not true. So to keep control, they lie to you, and you believe them. Most of what I'm talking about right now is religious witches. Sometimes you find them behind a pulpit. Sometimes you find them in a wife. Sometimes you find them in a husband. Sometimes you even find them in children. Because they work with their hands, their prayers, and they work and manipulate iniquity. Get away from me, ye that work iniquity. I never knew you. But didn't we do many mighty works in your name? Didn't we prophesy? Didn't we lay hands on the sick? Didn't we cast out demons? I never knew you. These hands are manipulative hands. Get away from me, ye that work iniquity. Because you see, these working hands will grasp hold of a true believing Christian and crush him. You're going to find out you don't have God without me. You're going to find out you can't go anywhere without me being in your way. Because you're going to be stopped because you didn't go the way God called me. You didn't do what God called me to do. So you're laying your hands on something that does not belong to you. Because you see, God can call and has the power to call every man, every woman. And he said, I have the power to raise up these stones to praise me. He has the power to call as many as he chooses that don't like your doctrine, that don't like what you do, that don't like what you say. He has the power to do that. He has the power to call them over here, over there, and say bye-bye to you because you control. You manipulate and you control with these hands that he gave you power and authority with these hands, not to manipulate somebody, pull them to yourself and keep them right there. You belong in this church. And once you come through the doors, if you ever leave, you're going to answer to God because God called you here. No man can tell you where God called you. No man can tell you where you belong. Nobody can take you and force you into submission to them. Submission is something that you freely give out of respect. You freely give it to the one that you know is living it. You freely give submission to the one that you can see the truth in, that you understand. They don't want you for themselves. They don't want your money for themselves. They don't want numbers for themselves. They don't want everybody to say, look at me, I've got the biggest church around. Well, I've got this and I've got that. They're not after that. They are after you finding Jesus. That is a true believer. I'm not talking about Marion Lynch. I'm talking about all those who love God with all their heart, because they're out there. Oh, wow. They're out there. Men and women who love Jesus Christ above all things, that would never touch another person's life. You, a soul comes into your life and they start working iniquity on you. You can feel it. You can feel suddenly you walk away and you feel like, what happened? I knew I had God before I talked to that person, but now I feel like I have nothing. And you look at them and you think, they have it all. Well, you've just come in contact with your first vampire that sucked all the life and blood out of you and took it for themselves and dusted their feet off of you without ever telling you and saying, you've got nothing and I've got it all. That's how they go into their prayer closets with you. They leave you by the wayside. And because you don't know God enough, you don't know they can't do that to you. You don't know how to protect yourself. There's a way to protect yourself. His name is Jesus Christ. You run to him and say, oh God, if this isn't me, show me. If this isn't the way, tell me. And I promise you, he'll be there. Oh God, I feel this way. And he will literally say to you, feelings are not of you, of me. Those feelings come from you or someone else. Don't go there. He will say, you see this? Don't go there. Go this way. This is me. That's the way he'll be with you. He's not going to slap you across the head and say, you had no business doing that. You're in trouble because you let this and you did that. No, no, no. He don't operate. God doesn't operate that way. God operates with unconditional love. He doesn't take you in because of what you've done, what you've accomplished, what you said, how you prayed, where you went, what you didn't do, and what you did do. He takes you in because he loves you. And he teaches you because he loves you. And if you are fortunate enough and blessed enough to learn how to become obedient, it's still not because you were obedient. It is because he loves you. He wants that obedience out of you. He wants it, but he tells you that it's nothing more than you being a faithful servant. You did what you're supposed to do. Well, does that mean that you're better than anybody else? Does that mean that you should have done better than everybody else? Does that mean you're higher than anybody else? If you're looking for those things, you're in the wrong pew. Now, is God using this message to destroy you? I think not. He will use this message to pull down the strongholds in your mind and heart where you've been lied to. I just talked to someone today on how to win the battlefield of their mind. Oh, I know you've been taught and told, and oh my goodness, they have so many followers that you've been taught and told you can't win that. Well, if Jesus Christ said in his word, bring every thought captive to Christ. Wow, that's a big order. And only Jesus Christ can handle it. Wow, that means you can take every thought captive enough to get your mind so completely cleaned out of you that God's presence and spirit can come and dwell. That means that every part of your imagination that was working, God has the power now to shut that door forever through prayer. You take it captive and you sit before him and you say, Lord, I was thinking this. I was believing that. I was going in this direction. And I used to write them down. I'd write them down, and I'd sit down, and these thoughts would come to me. And I'd say, Lord, tell me, is this the right way to go? Is this the word? And you could test it by the word. If it's not, if God doesn't give you the go ahead that it's okay to have, then you need to pray it down and bind it. You need to let God clean out the cup on the inside. Because you see, if you don't, you're in trouble. If you don't, you're always going to have something crop up that is going to lead, guide, and direct you in the wrong pew. Now, I'm going to tell you something that maybe you have never seen, but I will tell you this anyway. You take a look at a lot of your famous singers. I will use the Beatles, for instance. I will use Whitney Houston, for instance, and many, many others. They all started in church. They all developed their talents in church, and then they went out into the world. Now, some would say, well, they went out into the world and suffered all kinds of temptation and they willingly chose to go against God. I beg to differ with you. The power and influence of that is so overwhelming that if you got into it, I doubt if you could make it. So you cannot judge and condemn them to be, look what they did to their lives. Because chances are those wicked, evil people in that business overtook them. And they had no protection because they never had any teaching on how to protect themselves. And in some cases, and I'm positive it's true because God showed it to me, in some cases, in order to control them, they just injected them with some dope. They just started giving them a dose of dope, lying to them that it's this and lying to them that it's that. Using a doctor perhaps, but lies, so that they could control them and to make them addicted. I know of one singer that you couldn't go to their house without them singing gospel songs, and you had to listen to that, perhaps for hours, because they glorified God. And the people around this person got so fed up that they did just what I'm talking about. And then the world sees, oh, they're addicted. They even die under that power. But you see, he knows what happened. I'm not talking to you about any one particular person. You could put a name on it. That's your business. It's not mine. Your business is not mine. What you do with the truth that I expound to you is not my business. It's God's business. It really is. Whether you come or you don't go, I'm not putting a feather in my cap that this one listened to me and that one obeyed me and that one... No. You don't belong to me. I didn't die for you. Why would I want to do that to you? Why would I want to chuck you up? That's mine. Oh, on rare occasions, some of you become like my children. But that is way far and few between. It's like a special call that they realize the love that they have is for me as a mother or as a grandmother. That's entirely different. But I didn't call it. I didn't ask for it. I didn't bring it, and I didn't pray for it. God lays it on their heart. That's the way it becomes. And that's fine with me. But to literally put my hand on them, if I were to look at any one of you, and I don't know how many are listening to me, and say, you need to give me your tithe. Because if you don't, God's going to kill me. God's going to destroy me because I don't have what I am supposed to have. I know of a pastor that did that, had his own university. He was considered one of the greatest pastors. And I know that I read a letter from him with my own eyes that said those exact words, to an 80-year-old woman who had a Social Security check, and it wrote, and they knew it. And it wrote right in there, if you don't give me your Social Security check, God is going to kill me. And she cried, and she cried, because that was all the living she had. She was a widow. How was she going to eat? How was she going to pay her rent? How was she going to do anything? That somebody had the gall to use the name of Jesus Christ and say to her, if you don't do this, God is going to kill me, knowing the heart of that woman was sincere, crying, what am I going to do, God? Crying about her choice. Well, I'll tell you, God did deliver her. I won't tell you how, because I'll be honest with you, I don't remember. That happened probably 50 years ago. But I will say one thing. You hear a voice tell you, the Old Testament says you must tithe. You must give your first fruits. So whenever you get your money that you earned in, dig deep. Give God right off the top everything. Well, when it comes to your money, do that. But you see, if you owe bills, you borrowed for a house, you borrowed for a car, you pay electricity, you pay all of these people, they are the ones that have claim to that money. They are the lenders. You no longer own that money. You earned it, but it's not yours anymore. The moment you earn that money goes straight to them first. You pay your bills first. That's why God said, owe no man anything. But you see, the teachings of tithing have been so twisted up that people began to take everything and just give and give and give until they had the gall to stand there and say, well, I need a new jet. So they had the gall to start just taking because of your kind heart. So you see, so you have on this side all of your bills that come first. That's the first thing. Your first fruits don't start until you have money that's free, that you earn, that's completely free. So if you made $1,000 and you have $500 worth of bills, then you have to do that. You have to pay those bills. Then after you pay your bills, is there any place you owe any man? Because you're supposed to pay your debts. Well, if you have children, you've got to put food on their table, shoes on their feet, clothing on their backs. So that's why God only asked for 10%. But you decide, well, look at all the things you hear. In order to get money, you have to give money. So all of those things that you heard, that means, well, Johnny's not going to get his pair of shoes, and Mary's not going to get her skirt, and they're not going to get, and we're going to have to eat poorly for a while, but it's a sacrifice to God, and God is going to make it all right. And you do this month after month, and nothing happens. And so little Sally goes outside and she has nothing to put on her back, and the kids start making fun out of her. And she goes through persecution because God gave you the power to get wealth, to make money, to put clothing on her back, and you didn't do it. And so now she's a Christian and she's suffering persecution because of you. The same with the boy. Maybe he needs a new pair of shoes, and everybody that laughs at them is wrong. But that doesn't make what you've done right in putting others first, in putting actually yourself first. Well, I heard the call. God told me I must give. Sure you did. You heard their call, because I've got news for you. It could feel like God. It could act like God. It could sound like God and still not be God. You have to know the Word and you have to know God in order to have enough discernment to understand what He meant. Pay your bills first. Take care of your family first. Then what you have left over, 10%. Now, if you wanted to take 10% right off the top of the money that you earned that after you paid your bills, that's fine, but you make sure your child has what it needs. Because there are needs in this world like have never been before. And that discouragement with that child that can't have what they need, they're trusting in Jesus to find a way for them. And the way He found is you, and you won't do it. You are going to make sure you have a lot of money. So you're going to give from the top, and you're going to give everything. I've seen people do this. I've seen people refuse to pay their electric bill, didn't pay none of their bills. They didn't have any rent to pay. You know how I know? Because I personally gave them a home. So I know they had no rent to pay. But they did have to pay their own electricity because I wasn't made of money. I could only give them a home. So here was the thing. So month after month, look what I gave to the church. Practically gave my whole check. Practically gave whatever I earned, all of it. He gives the most in the church. And your children do without. And they start resenting you. And they start hating you. And you start thinking, well, I don't know what's the matter with my children. I didn't do anything. I did the right thing. They better obey. What happened to common sense? It went, why? Because you listened. Dig deep. Make sure you give. We have to pay the electricity in this huge mega church. We have to pay, you have to pay our bills because God said so. God says tithes and offering, and they will pull out the Old Testament, which that was for the Jews. And I'm going to tell you something. The fulfillment of the Word of God in the Old Testament comes one way. And that is the way Jesus Christ said it comes. Because you see, God says over here, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And Jesus said, but I say unto you, meaning love, mercy, and truth and grace in the New Testament fulfills the law. It's not the rituals. It's not the money. It's not what you do. It is the love, because He said, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself, and you will fulfill the law and the prophets. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and you will fulfill the law and the prophets. That's what He was talking about. The law of love, of mercy, grace, and truth, which is where Jesus came. That's what He came to bring. But you see, they want your money. So what do? They get this pastor who knows the Word from end to end, and they tell you, but it says this in the Old Testament, and this is the way you get money, this is what you do, and if you want money, you get money, and oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. So you don't even realize it, but money has suddenly lifted its head up so high you can't see your children's needs. You can't see your bills need paid. You can't see anything. You only see what you've been told. You only see that. And God's blessing me because you see, I'm blessing that one. And I'm telling you, you know how I know this? I had to repent of this. I used to do this. I had to repent before God. And here is how I repented before God and what I told Him. And God blessed me. It was the first time in my life He brought a lot of money into my life. after this prayer. And that was this: Father, forgive me. I thought when I gave to that one where her and her children were wearing mink coats when I had nothing, when the poorest of poor were filling the congregation up and had nothing, and they had it all. I thought that was what you wanted. I thought you wanted me to give as much as I could possibly give. When I butchered my own cows and I gave every single last one of those steaks, every single one of the properties I earn, that I own, and I gave them out rent free to people that had need. I thought that's what you wanted. I thought that's what you called me to do, was to give everything I had. When $20 come into my hands and that's all I had, I gave it to somebody that lied to me and told me they needed it. Somebody who was abusing me and hurting me. I did that, Lord. I took all of their persecution, all of their lies. I went through it for almost 20 years, Lord. But I tell you, Lord, I didn't do it because I lifted that woman and that man up. I didn't do it because the neighbor that I gave everything to was as high as you were. I didn't do that because I worshiped and loved them more than I loved you. I did that, Lord, because I really believed that you were calling me to do that. And I'm sorry, Lord. I never should have done that. Teach me your ways. Open up my understanding. Forgive me, Lord, and lead me into the paths of righteousness. Help me to understand the difference between controlling my money. Lord, you realize that when someone tells you, you better give your tithe. If you belong to this ministry, you better give it because you're going to pay. If you don't, you will have nothing. That's a curse. That's a literal curse. You will have nothing. You will be poor if you don't. That's a curse. They curse you. And you give in to it. And you believe it. And none of it is true. None of it. Not a single thing of it is true. Because everybody has been given a sound mind, a heart, and you can understand before God, when you get on your knees, He can tell you, don't do that. That is not what I meant. Don't let anybody covet your money. Because you see, when people tell you you must give, they are coveting your money. They are telling you what to do with what is yours. That's coveting it. That's against God. And you're letting them because you have not figured any of this out. If you make a decision to give to someone and your bills are paid, you have all your needs supplied for your children, and you make a decision to give to someone, not because they told you you must, not because we need this and we need that, but because that's the will of God. And you want to give something, I'm telling you, I gave every penny I had. I gave every moment of my time. And I didn't do it for 1 or 2 days. I did it for years. And finally, God came to me and said, Marion, I didn't ask you for all that. I asked you for 10%. I asked you for this much to do your part. I didn't ask you to give all that you had. It's something you decided to do. But because your heart is so real in wanting to do my will, I'm going to bless you anyway. And He did. There was such a huge amount of money that came into my home. If I sold a home, I made a huge profit with that home. All I had to do was go before God and say, Lord, what is it worth? And He gave me a number. And sure enough, if somebody wanted to buy it, and I named the price, I got that exact price. Because God was on the throne. Sure enough, I give and do where he tells me to, not where that one tells me or that one tells me, or I do exactly what he leads me to do. And I have been blessed ever since. I was never blessed all those years when it finally dawned on me. They're children. My daughter had two sets of clothing, two pairs of pants and two shirts and a pair of shoes, and that's all she had. Their children walked around with $200 dresses and mink coats. My child had nothing because was it that their fault? No. That was my fault. I didn't see. I was blind. Sure, I made it up to my daughter. Sure, God blessed me enough that I could have everything that money could buy for my daughter. Sure, God even saw to it that he blessed her. Because he remembers her persecution. He remembers the things she went through that were not her doing. It don't matter what you think of her. It doesn't matter what you decided. I've got news for you. When out of this mouth, when you curse someone, it comes right back on you, especially if that child belongs to a child of God. No matter what you think, no matter what you feel, you're not going to have peace with it when you meet God. You're not going to be able to say to God, well, I did that because she this and because you have no idea where that heart was. You didn't live with it. You didn't raise it. You had no business judging people according to your own selfish judgment. Because you wanted to win this prize. You wanted to grasp a hold of that prize. You wanted to obtain this money. You wanted, want. Shame on you. You never went through what she went through. You never went through what I went through. You never understood it, and you perhaps never will. But God has forgiven you because I asked him to. God says there's an open door for you. I love you. Forgive them, Lord. They know not what they do. That's my heart towards you. I might tell you the truth, but that doesn't mean I hate you. The truth is what sets you free. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, a good understanding to all of they who fear the Lord. So we're talking a little bit today, just touching on it. The power of witchcraft that works in a church through a so-called, quote and unquote, Christian who is actually a worker of iniquity, who actually manipulates and uses all of their prayers to obtain what they want. Listen to what I'm telling you. How do you think people get rich? They manipulate. Now, I'm sure there are times where God will lay it on the heart of so-and-so to give over here, and he'll lay it on the heart. And these are people who have a lot of money. They can afford to give. Their children aren't suffering for giving. They're not, whatever. People will many times want to give to me, and they'll say to me, I just have to give because, don't take my blessing. Don't tell me not to because I'm going to listen to God. Well, that's between you and God, but I'm not telling you. And I would never dare covet your money. The fear of God is upon me. I pray God open up your understanding so that you can discern who is who, how is how, what is what, where is where to go and where not to go, what to do and what not to do. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you came from. I don't care what happens in your life or happened in your past life. I pray that you get everything in your past so much under the blood that it can't raise up its ugly head 20 years down the road. I pray that you learn how to get every thought captive to Christ that you learn how to keep the imagination of your heart from working and let only God, because you see, God does not need your imagination to manifest himself. There are preachers that will teach you and say to you that if you want something, use your imagination and look at it, and that's coveting it. Look at it until you obtain it. There are preachers and teachers that will teach you that it comes down through your mind and your eyes, and God uses all of this to bring himself to you. Lie. He doesn't need your flesh to come into your heart and your mind. He does not do it through the flesh. He doesn't do it through your memory. He doesn't do it through your feelings. He doesn't do it through your understanding. He does it by the presence and power of his Spirit. That's why he tells you that the understanding of the word is not by your understanding. It is by the Spirit of God. So when he comes upon you, when you remember what he says and you retain it, it isn't because you're so smart. It isn't because your brain works so well. It's because his Spirit came upon you. And he retains all things. The Holy Spirit brings all things to your remembrance. Listen up. There's more to come. This is a new year. Your eyes will be opened enough for you to overcome.